Welcome back. And if you are new here, thanks for finding us. This is the place to get all of the information about the Ontario Hockey League. That's why we so appropriately named this podcast the OHL podcast. You see what we did there? Not just a couple of hat racks. Dan Mahar is my buddy over there. My name is Mike Farwell. And hey, while you're here getting all of the information you need about the OHL, why not hit that subscribe button, give us a like, leave a comment, drop an email, ohlpodcast@rogers.com. Let us know how we can do even better. But by all means, if you're here now, make sure you come back again because we come out every Tuesday with a new episode. And, Dan, is it just me? Or are there more suspensions than ever of late? I remember mentioning this on the wraparound a few weeks back. Oh, the first suspension of the league goes to, and now it seems every time I pick up my phone, there's another notice from the league about some very bad boys playing hockey right now.
Well, you know what? So is it a deterrent because these guys don't seem too concerned about getting themselves suspended? And one trend I'm noticing on these suspensions too is the same trend you see in the NHL sans suspension is avenging a clean hit, right? There's been a fair bit of that going on. Someone gets smoked, teammate comes in, fights a somewhat unwilling opponent, and then you're sitting for a couple. So that seems to be a common theme in these suspensions. There's been a few of those already, but a few other ones as well. We had a removing the helmet from an opponent suspension this weekend. So yeah, there's been a few.
I happened to see the removing the helmet suspension live, and let me tell you, it was the most entertaining part of that quote unquote fight because not much came of the scrap, but the one player, Max Diracolo of the Kitchener Rangers, who removed the helmet of Gabriel Eliasson of the Barrie Colts when they got tangled up in the corner. Diracolo removed said helmet with authority. Good thing Eliasson's head wasn't still in it. Perhaps that's why the suspension comes. I don't know. I've got a new broadcast partner on my Kitchener Rangers broadcasts this year, Dan, and he sort of in a similar context not too long ago described this sort of as the Florida Panthersification, if you will, of the Ontario Hockey League. Look at the way the Florida Panthers have modeled play in the National Hockey League to win back-to-back Stanley Cup championships. And I think we're starting to see this trickle down. Hey, if you want to play, and probably the London Knights would be a fair example in our league. You want to win a championship in hockey, you got to play a heavy game. You got to be a little bit mean, and maybe we're just starting to see more of that.
I think that's exactly it. And not just from the standpoint of trying to play like the Florida Panthers to win in the OHL, but you're always auditioning for your next job, right? And you're in a sea of 30 or 40 prospects in these NHL camps. One way to get yourself noticed is, be that guy that's standing up for a teammate, right? Be that guy that will do that, has a little grit to his game. And some of the players we've seen avenge teammates so far this year are not ones you necessarily would expect to. So I think maybe agents, NHL teams are in their ears saying, this is an aspect of your game you can work on. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right of these guys using this to get notice.
I mentioned already that this podcast is your premier source for all information around the Ontario Hockey League. Dan and I do something every week on this pod called The Wraparound, which is an intentional look at every market. We will get to that in just a bit. But as we dive into the topics this week, Dan, I don't know what else to call this other than the OHL oops, because we got an email from Scott after it happened last week. Scotty from Saginaw on the ball. Appreciate the email to ohlpodcast@rogers.com. And Scott told us in that email that Nick Sema of the Saginaw Spirit clearly pushed a puck across the goal line. So the Saginaw Spirit won their game versus Flint. But some way, somehow, the in-house video review, which remember, the league standardized across all 20 markets this year, enhanced so that there were more angles, etc., promised a better system for the 25-26 season. And some way, somehow, according to Scott in his email, the system went wrong. He wanted to know who's responsible for this. And I said, hang on a second, Scott, like it's not, don't go hard on the referees here. There's an in-house system usually made up of people in the market. So these would have been folks in Saginaw looking at the review. They have whatever angles they can send downstairs, this, that, the other thing. As it turns out, the league is responsible for this. They put out the statement earlier this week that we're sorry, we made a mistake. A puck clearly crossed the line and was not awarded to Saginaw. That would have given the Spirit an overtime win, Dan. Instead, they lose in the shootout, and the league is saying, we're sorry. There was a clock synchronization issue, whatever the hell that means.
You know, for the older crowd here that followed Seinfeld, it reminds me of Kramer saying, "Listen, buddy, I owe you one." You know, a lot of good that's going to do the Saginaw Spirit after this. And I know that when the OHL released their statement, they said, unfortunately, there's no policy to retroactively award points or change the outcomes of the game. And I mean, on the surface, that makes sense. That you get into a whole can of worms when you do that. But I would think outside the box in this one, say, why not? It was clearly a game-winning goal. There was going to be no action after that with the time left on the clock that would have influenced the outcome in any other way. Why not? Why not affect the standings after the fact? You've acknowledged the goal. I don't know. I'm thinking outside the box. We want the right outcome. Story about that Saginaw doesn't do a lot of good. And you know what? At the end of the day, it might not matter, but you'd hate to see this be a point that determines home ice or even making the playoffs at the end of the year because of that. So in a case where it was so clearly a switch of two, there's no arguing it was a switch of 2 points, you think you could retroactively review it like they do with some penalty calls I'm seeing. So I don't know. I hate seeing them get it so vastly wrong. That's all.
So let me answer your why not, because I've thought of this too, with a what if. So, okay, let's take it a step further and say I agree with you, which I cautiously do not. But let's say I do. Okay, why not award the point retroactively? So what if you do that? Then what is the next instance during which you award a point or change an outcome retroactively? Only in an instance just like this, or what other criteria are you going to end up establishing? So to put it another way, what can of worms are you opening if you retroactively go back and change this outcome? And I think that's what the league was probably wrestling with when it decided to say, you know what, we don't have a policy to go back and award that point or change the outcome.
No, you're absolutely right. And that's why it won't happen. Because it is a can of worms. There's way too much gray area. There's way too much cause for people to take up issue with this. The reason this one's unique, I'm just completely applying common sense and logic. With the time on the clock, there's no way there's going to be any other outcome. So it would be a unique one-off. And then, of course, you worry about precedents that are set. Well, you changed that outcome. How come you didn't change? So that's the line of thinking that will prevent the league from ever changing this or doing this. I would just say that this is one case where you could clearly argue there's no sane reason why we can't award this point because there was no way the other team was going to be able to respond to this given the time on the clock. Therefore, we're doing the right thing. It would be hard to argue that on a logical basis, but like you just said, you can argue it on the precedent setting, hard to figure out where the slippery slope ends kind of grounds that the league needs to stand on.
I have no doubt that this was considered for more than a minute in the league offices, whether or not they should almost create a rule, create the mechanism to go back and retroactively change the outcome of a game. But ultimately, not only do I think I understand why they landed where they did, but I agree with it because I just don't think you want to open that can of worms. In all of our time following this league, Dan, with video review, how many times has this happened before?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Well, we wouldn't.
I think the answer is 0, isn't it? So
I think so.
Yeah. So as awful as this is, I don't think you have to make it precedent setting. The league has said, look, the issue, this clock synchronization issue has been identified. Steps have been taken to correct it. You know, the integrity of the game is what matters most to us, and we've taken those necessary steps. Trust me, the Saginaw Spirit, this sucks. This sucks hard for the Saginaw Spirit, but I don't see another way the league really could have gone without getting into a huge gray area and that famous slippery slope if they did this.
Yeah, well, it's similar to the human factor in baseball, right? With the strike zone that people are always arguing is there's a human factor there. There's mistakes happen and you live with them. And yeah, I think that's the only leg the league really has to stand on here. And I will give them some credit for acknowledging it, right? They easily could have been swept under the rug and just not acknowledged. You know, no, score stood. So the fact that they've actually publicly acknowledged this issue, I mean, kudos for that. You didn't have to do that.
I'm with you on that. The transparency here is important and it is commendable. I also like, in that same vein, how the league is essentially taking the on ice officials off the hook, which is the right thing. When Scott sent that email to us, he was wondering, and he even was name dropping, hey, this so and so official, I didn't like him the last time he was here. So the referees and the lineies, whoever would have been looking at this replay, ultimately, they only have what they have to work with in the rink and what the system provides. So good on the league for not only being transparent, but also for owning the issue and essentially saying, hey, don't blame the stripes on the ice. This was a league thing. And the other piece I will add to that is, now that they've gone through this whole thing, I think you and I will both agree, Dan, to your point earlier, there is a collective holding of breath at the league offices in Toronto that this 1 point does not factor in any way into the outcome of this season. If it's home ice advantage, if it's making or not making the playoffs, because, oh my goodness gracious, then, I mean, if we're talking about this in late March 2026, the league is not going to be happy about that outcome.
No, but I mean, the takeaway here, the lesson learned is Nick Sema, shoot it quicker, man. Shoot it, like, jam that puck faster. That's the takeaway.
Speaking of takeaways, I guess we could argue that Oscar Hemming is being taken away from the Kitchener Rangers. This was reported a while back. You and I touched on it, Dan. As strange a story as either of us have ever seen. The Kitchener Rangers acquire Oscar Hemming in the import draft. They say, come on over to Kitchener, we've got a spot for you. But Hemming's home club back in Finland, where he had played, is not granting him his release. So all this time, we're coming up on the quarter point of the OHL season, he hasn't been able to get into an Ontario Hockey League game. Not only does it hoop the Rangers as a franchise, but this kid has been left dangling in the breeze here. Apparently, the Sherwood Park Crusaders and the BCHL have found a home for Hemming. He can go there and play because the BCHL is what we call an outlaw league, doesn't fall under Hockey Canada rules and regulations, so the transfer agreements don't have to be met, or whatever the language should be. But Hemming can go play in the BCHL, and yet Kitchener still is without a player that some would say slots right in as a top six forward.
Yeah, and I guess, if anyone can handle Northern Alberta, it's a Finn, right? But yeah, when my initial instinct, so I still have the same feelings on this as I did a week ago, which is that the bottom line is this is adults holding back a kid. I mean, I know there's a lot going on, but I tried to delve into it a little more, and as we do, get all the perspectives. And it's easy from an OHL's perspective to say, oh, I can't believe they're doing this. Like, come on, give the kid a break. So I still feel that way. At the same time, I did read some Finnish media sources and even some European scouting circles that say this isn't just about Espoo, his Finnish team. They're kind of being bolstered in the background by all the teams in those loops saying, got to put your foot down here. These contracts have to mean something. The CHL can't. So they feel that this is a precedent that cannot be set. They're really egging their peers on from behind, if you will, saying, this is an example we have to make of these contracts. So now the nuance is, of course, that under Finnish law, there's a clause where the parents can take a minor, which Oscar Hemming's a minor at 17 years old, and say, you're holding him back. We want to find a better opportunity. So that's kind of working its way through the court. So I'm not sure we've heard the end of this, Mike. I know it looks like we have with the BCHL and the September 30th deadline for leaving that league to play in the CHL. I think there's going to be exemptions made, much like there were last year, if at some point this gets resolved. But from what I'm hearing from overseas, that it's going to be a hill that they'll try and die on. So it would have to be the Finnish courts that ultimately rule, nope, parents were right here. Let's get this settled. So it might not be over yet, but yeah, it's a shame for the kid because he's a kid with top 10 NHL potential for the draft next year, and he needs to be playing in the best competition he can. And nothing against the BCHL. It's a good league. It's a not bad B option, but he wants his A option. Everybody wants his A option except his former team. So let's get this settled for the sake of the kid.
Speaking of those prospects for the NHL in the future, not only will Dan and I have our prospect of the week towards the end of this episode of the OHL podcast, but we'll also take a closer look at the NHL Central Scouting players to watch list that just came out. One of the things you said, though, Dan, strikes a chord with me because it's the reason I wanted to discuss Oscar Hemming again. Not trying to go over old ground. We did talk about it recently on this podcast, but now we know the BCHL is an option. The Sherwood Park Crusaders have said, hey, we're ready to welcome Oscar Hemming. We've signed him, et cetera. But what you said about those other Finnish clubs kind of getting behind Espoo here and saying we have to put our collective foot down. One of the reasons I wanted to bring this up again is because of the team that is impacted in the OHL, which is the Kitchener Rangers. And not just because that's our home club, but what you said about honoring the contract and the other teams getting behind Espoo in this regard. Could you have imagined the other 19 OHL teams getting behind the Kitchener Rangers when Adam Valentini essentially did the same thing, signed a contract with the Kitchener Rangers, the standard OHL player scholarship and development agreement, and then bolted a couple of weeks before the season started to go the NCAA route anyway. The Rangers were left dangling in the breeze on that one.
100%. And yeah, you can see all the conflicting points of view and conflicts of interest, if you will, right? Because, yeah, would the London Knights say, no, we want Valentini and Kitchener? Maybe they like it that he left. But at the end of the day, you're on the same side in the sense that you're in the same league, and these contracts, they do have a point. They have to mean something. But I think Mike McKenzie, when Adam Valentini left, said it best. He said, it sucks. We wish it wouldn't happen, but it happened. You have to let it. You just have to move on. And you know what? At the end of the day, we saw with Adam Valentini in the Central Scouting list that we're going to talk a bit about later. They've held him a bit accountable for that decision, have they not? He's a kind of listed as a W in the rank, like well lower than he expected, I believe. And is that something to do with the fact he made that decision? I believe so. I think many believe that NHL teams will hold that against a player, and maybe they will with Oscar Hemming too. But I think there's a little difference that Oscar Hemming had clearly outgrown the league he was leaving. There was very good reason for him to leave, and I'm not sure that was the case with Valentini. So, but I do agree with Mike McKenzie in that at the end of the day, it sucks, but you got to move on. The kid will do what they do, and you don't want a player that doesn't want to be there anyway.
This is the other aspect from the Kitchener Rangers side of things that I wanted to discuss this time. Now that it seems more official, if you will, not just rumored that Hemming would try out his BCHL options. First of all, in Sherwood Park, Hemming will be with Brennan Menard, who is the head coach and GM there, who just so happens to have been an associate coach, a previous associate coach with the Kitchener Rangers just a couple of seasons ago. So the Rangers maybe have enough familiarity there to make them comfortable with the way Hemming will develop in the BCHL. But that notwithstanding, what I'm also wondering, Dan, and I think the entire league will be interested in this, not just because we're Kitchener guys, but the Rangers are one of the teams, along with the Guelph Storm, in the running for the Memorial Cup bid in 2027. How does this change the calculus for the Kitchener Rangers? No Valentini on your roster this year. No Hemming all of a sudden on your roster this year, at least not yet. A couple of bona fide top six forwards. How does that change things for the Kitchener Rangers as we move through the season towards January 10th, the trade deadline, what the Rangers might have done this year, might not do now, etc., as they project to hopefully have a championship caliber team to host the Memorial Cup in 2027? I think that's really intriguing at this point.
Well, you can see that's just one aspect, right? But one little decision by a player and his family puts the balls in the air for so many different people, right? NHL scouts saying, well, we had this kid in the top 10, but is he now? There's all kinds of things that are up in the air with this pending decision, I guess. And the one you're referring to with Kitchener Rangers, the Memorial Cup, that's a huge one because there's no doubt about it that Oscar Hemming was a key piece of what they hope to build around next year. That's why they were so keen to get him. He was going to be a first-line player next year on that Memorial Cup bid. So not just for Kitchener to say, well, what do we do now? Do we have this piece next year? Which is quite highly possible still. The contract will be up in Europe. Things could still move forward for next year for Kitchener and Oscar Hemming. But it's in the air. and they don't know. And when you're deciding who hosts the Memorial Cup, that's another ball in the air for the CHL to say, well, we're evaluating the cores of these two teams, the Guelph Storm and the Kitchener Rangers. What does Kitchener's core look like? We don't know. It does it have Hemming? Does it have the? So these are all things that are going to have to be settled, or there's going to be a lot of uneasiness for a lot of people. But yeah, particularly for Mike McKenzie, because I mean, it's one thing if you're talking about a third liner or a third pairing defender and you have to replace him, but you're talking about a centerpiece. So yeah, a lot goes up in the air when these decisions are made.
Exciting action on the ice in this league, intrigue off the ice, and we have only just begun. We will get to that players to watch list from NHL Central Scouting. We will get to our own prospect of the week and what I'm calling perhaps the greatest troll job in Team Canada history. Maybe it's not a troll. Maybe it's an omen, but we're going to get to all of that. So don't go anywhere. Just stay with us here on the OHL podcast. Hockey is back, and this season, DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, brings you all the speed, skill, and nonstop action you love. DraftKings Sportsbook delivers the unmatched intensity of the NHL right to your fingertips. From player props to the thrill of live in-game betting, every drop of the puck is your shot to win big. New customers, this one is for you. Bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get paid out $300 in bonus bets instantly. I use this DraftKings Sportsbook app, and you should too. Light the lamp all season long with DraftKings. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. That's code THPN to turn $5 into $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. It is that time of the podcast where Dan and I take a look around the entire Ontario Hockey League. We split it up because we're democratic that way. Dan does one side of the league, I do the other. 10 teams for each of us. And Dan, you are on Eastern Conference duty this week for the wraparound. So why don't you start us off in, I believe, Barrie?
Yeah, a place you just were. And you saw the Barrie Colts snap an ugly 6-game losing streak that neither one of us saw happening this year based on their roster. But I'm sure it was a relief for them to get that overtime win on the strength of the goal by Cole Baudouin. And I would just say if they want to keep the winning streak going, when you're leading the conference in penalty minutes, you better have a penalty kill functioning at more than 66%. And you saw how discipline was a bit of an issue for those Colts in that game, even though they pulled it out. So going forward, a little more discipline and things will turn around for them.
I'm glad you mentioned that I was just there, Dan, because I would like, if it's not too much trouble, to add a little bit to the Barrie experience, having just been there about 72 hours ago.
Sure.
Okay, thank you for that. So I think every now and again we'll drop these little Easter eggs into the wraparound for you because I am fortunate enough to travel around the league. And a few years ago on this podcast, I had some fun doing media room rankings as to the media rooms I enjoyed the best. And I will not tell a lie. In some of them, we get fed pretty well. But I thought, how much really? And do average fans get out of that? Oh, Farwell, I'm glad you had a nice meal before you went to work for the night. Like, it does pretty much nothing for the fan, but we have had some fun behind the scenes with this. I get chirped every once in a while in a media room because people didn't like my rankings, but I might do another one at some point. But I bring that up because if I were to do another ranking of media rooms around the league, Barrie would be in 20th spot. I'd give them 21st if there was a 21st spot to give, but they don't even have a media room at the Sadlin Arena anymore. You can't get a cup of coffee. You can't get a slice of pizza or a finger sandwich. You can't sit around, most importantly, and talk to other people before the game, gather some intel, maybe just enjoy a little bit of camaraderie, heaven forbid. And selfishly, I'm not trying to make it about me and getting a meal before I do my job. I think what we have to remember here is it's a room for media and scouts. And I think it's really important if you're wanting scouts to come to your arena to watch your players for potential draft into the National Hockey League or somewhere else, you want to make them feel welcome when they get there. And there's no opportunity for those scouts to grab that cup of coffee, to talk to other scouts, to have a seat, get out of the car and just, relax for a few minutes before watching the game. And this is what happened when I was in Barrie. One of the scouts came up to my broadcast booth and was taking pictures of our media notes because he didn't find them in the arena because there was no place to go to get them. Unless you knew you had to come in the back door where the players come in, and there's a little unstaffed table with some packets on it that you could have picked up. But there he was asking questions of us and taking pictures of our notes because he didn't get any when he got into the rink. I think that is a serious problem. So all jokes aside, you should have some sort of place for scouts to gather in your arena. And oh yeah, by the way, one more thing, enough with the 7:30 starts. Can we just ban the 7:30 start? Enough is enough. I don't like the 7:30 start, Dan Mahar.
So what you're saying is the Barrie Colts came 20th in the media room rankings, and they thought, in a sports cliche, there's only one way to go from here. And they said, oh, I beg to differ. We're going to go for 21st. And then when every other team was saying, let's start earlier to avoid the Blue Jay game, they said, no, we hate the Blue Jays. So that's what's going on in Barrie.
That might have been a reason for my added crankiness while at the Sadlin Arena. Nonetheless, I just wanted to add that on to the Barrie experience as you started the wraparound in the East. I will begin on the Western side in Erie, PA. And how about 5 goals in his past 6 games for Brett Hammond, who now has 7 goals on the season. And that matches his combined total of the past 2 seasons over 122 games. Hammond has 7 goals this year in just 11 games. And oh yeah, by the way, when in doubt, start the hometown kid. Erie just finished 5 in a row on the road, winning only once, but the one game that they won came in Sault Ste. Marie, where they started Sioux native Charlie Burns in goal, and he turned aside 28 shots, or it made 28 saves in a 5-2 Otters win in the Sioux.
Always good advice, because as a Habs fan, I can tell you, any guy with even remote French-Canadian heritage that plays his first game in the Bell Center scores a hat trick. It's a given. So.
Do it every time in Montreal.
All right, moving to Brampton. So I wanted to point out goaltender Luke Johnson, from playing U16 AAA in Chicago, thrown into the fire for his first start on the weekend. Didn't go that well, 5-1 loss to Niagara, but stopped 26 of 30 and facing significantly upgraded competition for what he was used to. So good on you, Luke. Good debut.
Funny how goalies are factoring in here to the wraparound so far. I've got a mention of that in Flint as well, which is where I head next. First of all, Captain Nathan Aspinall signed his entry-level contract with the New York Rangers, so congratulations to him. And goaltender Mason Corvell picked up his first career shutout. He made 19 saves in a 5-0 win over Erie. Now get this, Corvell just turns 16 this week, making him the youngest OHL goaltender in 18 years to record a shutout in the OHL. Bryce O'Hagan did it for the Sioux back in 2007. He was 10 days younger than Corvell when he got his first OHL shutout. 10 days. He beat me by 10 days.
Good on you, Corville. So a couple things in Brantford this week, Mike. First of all, do they need more firepower? Because how about Adam Banak leading the OHL with 22 points in 11 games, going at 2 points per game pace? You needed that on top of all the other firepower. But the other thing is, if anyone ever questions whether plus minus is a team stat, you'd like to know that the top 9 plus minus players in the OHL all play for the Brantford Bulldogs right now. And I'm even going to say the top 10 because it's a 4 or 5 way tie at number 10, of one of which is Sam McHugh of the Brantford Bulldogs. So we'll say the top 10 plus minus players in the league all play for the same team.
You want to play a little fun game with the Brantford Bulldogs for just a moment, Dan?
Sure.
Okay. What comes first? A Brantford Bulldogs regulation loss this season, or Jay McKee's NHL coaching job?
I'm going to go with the regulation loss just because I'm playing the odds, but it's not a given. I'll say that.
I'm with you on that. I mean, I don't think Jay McKee is going to go anywhere this season. There's a game plan here, but there's no doubt that Jay McKee is destined for a pro job. But just for fun, I mean, I'm going to rattle off 5 names or 5 cities for you, okay? Barrie, Flint, Saginaw, Peterborough, Oshawa. Those are the next 5 games for the Brantford Bulldogs. Are they losing any of those games? No disrespect to those teams, but this Bulldogs team is a wagon right now.
Oh, indeed. And probably going to get stronger because somehow a lot of assets in the cupboard to add as they needed. So yeah, I'm not sure they're losing any of those, but you never know those trap games, right?
Yeah, for sure. That they will happen, and eventually that zero in the regulation loss column will disappear. But what a start for the Brantford Bulldogs, to say the very least.
Absolutely.
I'm in Guelph now on the western side of the wraparound, and you might have a tough time spelling it, but you will remember hearing the name Yako Wysick, the Storm rookie, whose name has been coming up an awful lot. Wysick was the second overall pick this year. He's got 4 goals, 2 assists for 6 points in his past 6 games. That makes him the highest scoring 16-year-old rookie so far this season, with 7 goals and 5 assists for 12 points through 12 games. And oh yeah, by the way, speaking of hearing it before, Dan and I talked about this just a week or two ago, Jet Luchenko. And when we talked about Jet Luchenko then, we said, remember where you heard it first. We told you that it sounded like Luchenko was on his way back from the Flyers to the Ontario Hockey League. And he is. The only question now, I guess, Dan, is how long does he stay in Guelph?
Yeah, probably not really long, but great news for the Storm either way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and talking about bright spots. So when I go to Kingston, one of my favorite cities, as you know, a little bit up and down, but pretty good returns so far. But I had to point out the play of Nolan Snyder, don't I? I mean, 8th-round pick, kid from Pittsburgh, comes in and out of nowhere, 11 points in his first 13 games, and has been just a pleasant surprise game in, game out. One of those kids where you say, oh, it was a good game. Oh, it was a good week. Well, it's a good month. Just keeps showing up every time and has elevated himself, getting some more minutes in Kingston right now. So great early season story for Nolan Snyder.
Off to the Kitchener Rangers for me, and everybody knows, in fact, we've already touched on it in this episode of the OHL podcast, that the Rangers are one of 2 teams in the running to host the Memorial Cup next year. And part of that bid, of course, will be the projection of the team they can put on the ice. For that, Kitchener is going to be looking at its 07 birth year core, the 2023 draft. And that was the draft where the Rangers got 2 first-rounders, Cameron Reed and Luca Romano. Now, there was some chatter that Luca Romano was off to a bit of a slow start this season, but he sped up in a hurry this past weekend. He had 4 dangerous shots on goal on the Friday night, a goal and 2 assists on Saturday, and 2 more goals on Sunday. Reed, meantime, scored his first goal of the season on the weekend, and he's currently on a 6-game point streak with 9 points, a goal and 8 assists over that time. Reed had just 2 assists in his first 6 games before this streak started.
Nice to see them heating up.
They certainly are.
And another team heating up, Mike, just down the road, another team we liked in the preseason predictions, the Niagara Ice Dogs. 4-game winning streak, points in 7 of the last 10. And a guy I had in my kind of honorable mentions for potential scoring leader when I picked Liam Greentree was a dark horse, which was Kevin He. 18 points in 12 games, looking like he might be a contender, like I thought. So things are starting to roll for the Niagara Ice Dogs.
Contender, you say. Is a three-peat still possible? I'm looking at London on the wraparound. First of all, the Knights have named Sam O'Reilly the 54th captain in franchise history. And yes, all the talk is about Brantford being undefeated in regulation. We already touched on it. But don't look now, because there are only 2 teams who have lost just twice in regulation so far this season. One of them is London. Any guesses, Dan, on the other team? Only 2 regulation losses so far?
One sound?
No, Windsor.
Windsor, of course.
Of course, yeah.
But
So here's the thing.
Yeah.
With London, they've been to OT a ridiculous 7 times. 7 times in just 12 games. 11 of their 17 points have come by way of bonus hockey. But at the end of the season, they don't ask how. They just ask, how many points do you have in a quest for a 3rd straight OHL championship?
And they could do it. I'm not going to doubt them. So going from consistently elite to a team that reflects my report card more, consistently mediocre. So we're going to go with North Bay. You know, when I look at North Bay, what jumps out at me is what doesn't jump out at anyone, which is they are mid-pack in just about everything. Team record, power play, penalty kill. They are 5-5 in their last 10, and their goals for 42. Goals against, can you guess?
42.
42, good guess. They are right on that.
It was a very leading question,
It
Mahar.
was
I
leading,
like
but you nailed it. You nailed it. You hit it out of the park. So North Bay, I'm not sure if this is a good thing or bad thing or what you wanted to hear, but you are the league median in almost every regard. You are that team. You're mediocre North Bay.
You know who's not mediocre is the Owen Sound attack. We talked several weeks ago. Are they for real? Yes, they're for real. And how about Tristan DeLille? He's got a point in every game so far this season for Owen Sound. 6 goals, 15 assists for 21 points. That has him sitting 5th in league scoring. Jake O'Brien leads the way with 23 points, but a 15-game point streak, a point in every game so far for Tristan DeLille.
And he won't be the last DeLille to do that. I'm calling it right now.
Oh, I like that. I was wondering if, because showing little brother Max on the same team, this is how we do it in the O, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of time. So, yeah, it's coming. All right, Oshawa Generals. I know we're going to talk a little bit more about the Central Scouting list, but I wanted to point out for all the doom and gloom around, while it's a rebuilding year, Oshawa's not going to be very good, but 6 Generals landed on that preliminary list so far, which is great, including Brooks Rakowski leading the way as an A prospect, which means projected to go in the first round. And with that size and ability, which he brought, we saw at the Helenka, I'm not doubting that one. So good showing for the Gens in the early scouting.
I'm going to look at Saginaw now. We already talked about the OHL robbing them of a point. Oops, the video review oops, but we'll focus on something more positive, which was Jacob Cloutier's first career hat trick, and it could not have come at a better time. Cloutier had the natty hattie, the natural hat trick in the third period to bring Saginaw back from a 2-1 deficit to defeat Owen Sound 4-2. And one more note from Saginaw, which is Sebastien Gervais, who passed Patrick Asselin for second all-time in games played for the Spirit. Gervais has now played in 273 games for Saginaw, which is 29 fewer than all-time leader Cole Koski. All things being equal, Gervais will graduate from the OHL and his time with the Saginaw Spirit as the all-time leader in games played this year.
Congratulations to him. And a big part of those Saginaw Spirit who are comeback kids lately, don't count them out of any game.
No kidding. They can score, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Mike, when I coach or when we played, anytime we played, you always have that, that get a good start mantra, get like first shift's the most important shift. Get out there, get on them. Well, I should have had Thomas Vandenberg on my team because when I go to the Ottawa 67s, I look around, who's ready for the puck drop? Well, that guy, 4 first goals of the game already this year, and we're just in October. So there's a kid that knows how to prep for games. So if any OHL players, any young players, you want to figure out how to be ready for that puck drop, give Thomas a call and figure out his secret formula because he's getting on the board early and getting that team up. So good on him.
I'm looking next at the Sarnia Sting. One of our commenters on our YouTube channel last week said, if you've got good things to say about the Sarnia Sting, you're not paying attention. I'm going to assume that he is a Sting fan. I know fans get restless. And look, when I look at Sarnia this week, I know the goals have been hard to come by for the Sting. They've scored the 3rd fewest in the league. Only Erie and Sudbury have scored fewer. But on the other side of the ledger, Sarnia is in the top 10 for goals against, keeping them out. So the Sting are pretty stingy, if you will. And don't panic just yet. Sarnia is averaging a little more than 3 goals per game because they're tied with Flint and London for the fewest games played so far this season. They're going to have to score more. There's no doubt about that. Hanging around that average of 3 isn't going to get it done. But Alessandro Diorio should be close to returning from injury.
I hear you, Sarnia fans. I know it's painful, but there are positives. Just got to look for them.
There you go.
Turning to Peterborough, they spent a fairly high import pick on Adam Novotny and slowly seeing him start to come in his own, 13 points in 14 games. So he's starting to assert himself, a thick kid who has some wheels. But what's impressive about him, too, is those Peterborough Petes who haven't had as many wins as they'd like yet. Well, 3 of their game winners have come off the stick of Adam Novotny. So a bit of a big clutch player for them so far.
Up north to the Sioux for me, and this is short and sweet. Brady Martin is back, and Brady Martin is the Greyhounds captain. I'm not sure anyone in the Sioux or anyone in the league needs to know any more than that. Brady Martin is a huge talent, and we're going to have fun watching him through the rest of this season.
He is so good, it's like adding an entire first line to your team.
And I should be clear, back from the NHL with the Nashville Predators. Not back from an injury, not back from a suspension, back from the pros. And he's going to make some noise in this league.
Oh yes. And making a little less noise, but I'm going to end in Sudbury. I'm going a little off the radar for this one, but watching a little bit of the Wolves games over the weekend, a guy that caught my eye is not for offensive reasons, but Henry Doucette, 2008 born player, decided he's going to, throw the weight around a little bit, play with some jam, get the teammates going. And I thought it really worked because when you have a kid playing lower down your lineup, not there to hit the score sheet, doing what he can to get noticed and bring his teammate into the fight. I've seen a few players like that over the years in the OHL. We saw one, Mike Duco, years back in Kitchener, right, Mike? And I'm not saying he'll have that kind of success, but I will say he caught my eye in the games this weekend for Sudbury. A welcome element to their lineup.
And I will finish the West in Windsor, that team with only 2 regulation losses, along with the London Knights. Brantford leads the way, 0 regulation losses. But for Windsor, overager Owen Outwater has been waived by the Spitfires, landed with the Trenton Golden Hawks closer to his home in Ottawa in the OJ. Outwater was originally a first-round pick of the North Bay Battalion, ended up playing 196 OHL games with North Bay, Kingston, and finally in Windsor. Finished up with 29 goals, 85 points. He's already got 2 goals and 2 assists in 2 games with Trenton. So there you go for Owen Outwater. And also for the Spits, goaltender Michael Newlove picked up his first career shutout, making 18 saves in a 2-0 win over Ottawa.
Nice. And Outwater did ask for that release, by the way, with team granted to him, which is I just like to note because these teams do work with players for their best interests.
And it looks like this is in the best interests of the kid, right? Get a little bit closer to home. You knew things weren't working out there in Windsor. Go on from there. Give him a nice landing spot, and that's what the Spits were able to do for sure.
100%. And Trenton likes it too. So yeah.
There is a now former GM in the Ontario Hockey League that has landed in a new spot. We'll tell you about him and the hole he leaves behind and that players to watch list from NHL Central Scouting, plus the troll job or the omen. You decide as we continue this week on the OHL podcast. Dan, you were the one that alerted me to this, and that is Team Canada holding training camp for the upcoming World Juniors in Niagara Falls. Probably not a troll job. I think an omen might be a better way to look at this, but that's what I'm reading into going to the Niagara Falls area for Team Canada training camp. That is an area that is ripe for OHL expansion. Why not bring some of the best junior hockey players there to get ready for the tourney over Christmas?
Yeah, and I mean, it could be that big, beautiful rink there that hosts their Junior B team that donated them a sheet of ice for a few, or it could just be the conspiracy we know is true, Mike, which is Niagara Falls is definitely coming back into the league, right?
Absolutely. See, this is where I wanted to go. Thank you. You read my mind, just like I read your mind on the 42-42 with North Bay, goals for, goals against. This is what I'm thinking. Hockey Canada, it's a shrewd move here, and they're in cahoots, I tell you, cahoots with the OHL.
Well, it wouldn't be a bad thing. I don't know if you've been to that facility, Mike. I've played there a few times. It's it's really nice for this kind of thing. People will say, well, yeah, they need a few more seats for the OHL, maybe, but it's a spacious venue. It's perfect for this, but more importantly, it's a showcase for fans in that area of this level of hockey and the interest that lies there. So I think, people are always watching these things, Niagara. Go out and see that camp.
I haven't seen the facility yet. I'll take you at your word, obviously, but this reminds me, Dan, and last year towards the end of the OHL season, I think the second half of our season on this podcast was dominated by the expansion talk, right? We thought for sure that there might have even been teams added already last year with Youngstown and Muskegon. Didn't happen. It seems like it's almost back burner or side burner at best right now. I know these things don't happen overnight, and you shouldn't rush into them. You want to make sure that your league is healthy and can absorb these new teams. But this just, to me, gets the conversation going again about a market that would do very well by adding to the Ontario Hockey League. No matter which side of the border you're on, I'd prefer the Ontario side. But hey, Niagara Falls, New York, we'll take you. We love you. We got no problem with that.
Oh, definitely. And yeah, you're right. It's a long process to vet these teams because making a mistake with expansion is well worse than the gains that can come from taking the risk. But these things are all pieces of information gathering, I'll call it, for the league and for everyone involved when they're looking at how viable markets are, or what, every little bit counts. So I think this is this part of the scoping out. But you're right, it'll take a little time to get there, but just more information on the pile.
I talked earlier about a landing spot for someone in this league, but leaves a hole behind. Let's call it a void instead. It's the Boyd void now in Ottawa because GM James Boyd is leaving the nation's capital and the Ottawa 67s to join the league office as our new VP of hockey operations. This guy, Boyd, has decades of experience in the league, started as an assistant coach with the Belleville Bulls. Can we talk expansion? Can we bring the OHL back to Belleville? I don't want to get rid of the baby Sens entirely, but just can you get the hell out of Belleville so we can come back? Because I like that city on the circuit too. GM of the year was Boyd in 2019, 2020. And now, as the VP with the league, I tell you, you look at the job description, he's got a ton on his plate. The one that jumps out to me is player and official development, but I'll get into that a little bit more after you share your thoughts, Dan, on James Boyd, the new VP of hockey operations for the Ontario Hockey League.
Seems like a perfect fit, does it not? I mean,
Sure
it
does.
bolstered, yeah, that league off is just bolstered with a guy of his pedigree. And the first thing that jumped to mind when I saw it was this is a guy we both predicted the 67s to miss the playoffs, I believe, this year, and this terrific start. So you see a GM of his caliber, of his skill, brings in the right players, the right fit, knows how to build a team, has the various components you need, a little bit of scoring, a little bit of physicality, a little bit of goaltending. He's done that for years. He just kind of does it over and over. So even when you look on paper and say, I don't know about that team, and sure enough, a couple guys come out of the woodwork, and like the Thomas Vandenberg from the wraparound that I just described. So yeah, James Boyd has just consistently done a really good job in Ottawa, and what better fit for the league?
Yeah, and you talk about how he is building teams that are, at least, I mean, for what it's worth, surpassing our expectations. But I think that speaks to development. And that's why I highlighted player and official development as part of the job description that stood out the most to me. Even in the release that the league put out, I mean, it's far too lengthy for me to get into all of the things that the league says this VP of hockey operations is going to be responsible for. So I can't even imagine what the original job description looked like. But if fans want to go back to the OntarioHockeyLeague.com website and read the release with all of those things, that's fine. Why I wanted to focus on player and official development here, Dan, is because of that last word in there, development. And I don't think it's ever been more important in this league than it is today. Because I'm going to tell you what, and I'm not telling tales out of school, and people are going to smack me for being Captain Obvious here, so I'll gladly put the C on my jersey. But if you don't develop your players in the Ontario Hockey League today, somebody else is going to develop them for you. Just look at the exodus, if you will, some high-level talent, including Porter Martone from Brampton. I'm not trying to knock on the Steelheads organization, but you think when he goes to Michigan, when he heads to the States, he doesn't get an opportunity to, for the training that he wants, for maybe the coaching that he wants. If we're not going to do it in this league, then some other league is going to do it for us. And that's something I think will be critical in James Boyd's new role here, helping out every one of the 20 teams to ensure that they can do what the best teams in the league are doing when it comes to developing those players.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Never discount what these resources mean to the member clubs, right? You have a guy of James Boyd's pedigree and ability and experience. That's a brain you can pick now. Couldn't pick it when he was sitting in Ottawa, really. I mean, unless he's just being a good guy. But he's now got the mandate to go out and help these teams and help these less experienced GMs and coaches figure out what they need to do. And he can identify problem markets in the league and help work with them directly. So I think it's just more resources at the problem, and more resources is always a good thing.
If the league doesn't get this right, I mean, I wonder, Dan, when you look around, like look at the teams that invested millions of dollars into facilities just this offseason. And you and I have gotten into this at some length as we've gotten into this new season here on the pod. But and not every market can right away. You can't all do it at the same time. But it's got to do with not just the facilities, but the way these players are trained, coached. I mean, the entire organization has to be on the same page here. And I'm not sure if we look across the entire league that every team, every market has those building blocks in place. And I think a guy like James Boyd can really help those markets get on the right track for this development curve.
Yeah, very well said, especially when you consider the definition of those building blocks is fairly broad, right? We're not just talking necessarily the right players. We're talking about the right athletic staff, the right off ice people, the right facilities. That every component of your franchise, we just assume these people know how to do it. But then you see time, like we heard the complaints from Sarnia. I'm not picking on Sarnia saying they don't know how to do it, but could they use a little help from a James Boyd? I mean, this can only be a good thing, right? And when you can identify those problem markets and have a guy that knows what he's talking about, can go in there, assess it, review it with them, and say, okay, well, here's where you're strong, here's where you're weak, here's what you need to do as an action plan to fix the weaknesses. This is a great thing, and I think people underestimate how important those kind of assessments and off-ice resources are.
It's a nice ad by the commissioner, Brian Crawford, with this hire in the league office. I think Dan and I clearly agree on that. Congratulations to James Boyd on the appointment. Have fun working 18 hours a day. It's going to be great. You're going to love it. It's hockey. It's not really work. Trust me.
But not weekends. They don't work weekends.
Yeah. It's a weekend league. Why isn't the league? You know what? We're going to start texting Boydie on weekends just to see. Hey, are you working weekends?
Test him out.
He officially starts on November the 17th. Something Dan and I do every week on the podcast is take a look at the prospect for next year's NHL draft that has caught our eye. Before we get to ours, NHL Central Scouting is out with its players to watch list. And it's funny, Dan, you made reference to this earlier when we were talking about Adam Valentini and where does he show up. The rankings go A prospect, B prospect, C prospect, and then W. And as Josh Brown, the writer for the Waterloo Region Record, who covers the Kitchener Rangers, put it, what did D do to anybody? I've got a theory on that. Do you mind if I just
Go, please
that?
do.
Okay,
Yeah.
because you see, A, B, and C are marks that you'd be happy with in school. Let me tell you, when I got to post-secondary and I got my first C, I was shocked. I was like, what is this? Because I'm not trying to brag here. I did a little bit better through elementary and high school, okay? So C's were not marks I saw a whole lot of until I got to post-secondary. And the first C was like, what the hell? And then all of a sudden it's like, C's? I'll take these every day. Like I can still go to the on-campus pub and I can do this and I can still get a C because when I graduate, they're just going to give me a transcript that says I got my courses. Doesn't matter what marks are on there anymore. A D is a whole hell of a lot harder to explain. So the NHL Central Scouting said, you know what? We're not going to D anybody here. You're just going to get an A, B, C, or whatever the hell a W is. What probably means we're watching you.
There's player to watch.
Yeah. There's my theory on why the D's. D is a bad grade. Nobody wants to be a D. C's, everybody's still happy with C's. If you don't like your C now, you'll get used to it. I promise.
Well, it's an excellent theory, and you're probably right because, so yeah, A is projected first rounders, B second or third rounders, and the C's rounds 4 through 7 in theory, and then the W is player to watch. And I think I should have gotten W's on my report card and just told my parents I'm a student to watch, right?
Yeah, you were being watched all right.
But yeah, I think your theory's bang on. Yeah, you don't want to tell someone their D doesn't sound great when realistically, I mean, it would be, if you're on the radar for the NHL draft, that's a pretty good thing.
Couple of things stand out to me, Dan. One is Oscar Hemming, still having not played a game in the Ontario Hockey League, and we talked about him plenty earlier in this podcast, but he's still getting an A beside his name as a potential first rounder. And then Ethan Belchez and Ryan Rubrick, who take it for what it was worth, but the preseason media poll for the Ontario Hockey League had Belchez and Rubrick as the prospects most likely to go highest next June to the National Hockey League. Right now at this point, and I'm not trying to take anything away from Rubrick, but Ethan Belchez is just demonstrating that he is going to be the player to chase, if you will, for highest player drafted out of the O into the NHL next June. But those are some high-level takes on what I saw in the list this time around.
Was that an Easter egg when you said the player to chase? Because I think Chase Reed is actually going to shoot up that list when Brady Martin's there to direct home some of his tips and rebounds. But yeah, those two, and I think you're absolutely right. So Ryan Rubrick had a bit of a sleepy start, and I think from my viewings anyway, terrific player, and I had him right at the top of my list at the start of the year. But sometimes the give a crap meter, for lack of a better term, is questionable. Whereas with Ethan Belches, it might be set too high sometimes. He can lose his marbles sometimes in the heat of the game, which is appealing to NHL teams, right? They can rein the kid in, but they know he's a gamer. So I think you're right. I think at this point, Belches has probably taken a slight lead there. And like I said, I expect Chase Reed to elevate there. But there's some other dark horses there too. And a whole lot of W's in the OHL, players to watch. And to me, I didn't do the math and add it up, but it feels like there are a lot more, particularly C's, than there actually would be in the NHL draft. So we'll see which ones actually come to fruition on draft day. But a whole lot in that kind of maybe zone.
One of those players that ended up with the W as a player to watch is a guy that has caught my attention. Granted, he's 18 years old. He's got some USHL experience, but Ben Wilmot of the London Knights. And it just seems like every time I turn around, he's scoring another goal, including a game winner. He's second in the league in that department, game winning goals with 2 already this season. The leaders only have 3 for what it's worth, but there's a guy you can understand why they end up on the radar. This is a nice little check-in, maybe some inspiration or encouragement for players. And remember too, this is one scouting services, if you will, NHL Central Scouting draft list. There will be myriad others that look at it differently, but as fans of the Ontario Hockey League, these are 92 players that are at least on the NHL radar. And I said this when I was broadcasting our last weekend's game between Kitchener and North Bay. Come and see Cam Warren. It's too bad he only gets to come to Kitchener once. And I don't know if fans are going to go up to North Bay over the Christmas break when the Rangers are up in North Bay playing in the Battalion's home rink. But this kid, I think, for my money, is worth the price of admission. It's the beauty of this league, and I don't need to repeat that again and again. We talk about it all the time.
Well, yeah, Cam Warren, when you're that age and making that just under a point a game at this stage, I mean, that's a guy that North Bay. I'm sorry I called you mediocre. You won't be for long with kids like that.
Fair point. Fair point. Okay, we know who the NHL is keeping an eye on. Dan and I are keeping eyes on prospects every week in this league, and we like to leave you with our prospects of the week, one from each of us, the NHL draft eligible player that caught the most of our attention. Dansky, who you got this week? Who caught your attention?
Well, who caught my attention is a kid who I think is a B skater. He isn't yet, but I think he will be by the end of the year. And that's defenseman Ben Reisnecker on the Niagara Ice Dogs. And I'll tell you why. He's a really fluid, smooth skating guy that can kind of do everything NHL teams need you to do. And sometimes when you're a European player, you come over, there's a acclimatization period. I feel like that happened. 5 points in his last 3 games, starting to get pucks to the net, starting to take advantage of those forwards down low who have the hands to finish for him. So he's a guy, Ben Reisnecker, who I think is going to shoot up the draft list as the season goes on.
Okay, I'm sorry. Did you say the Niagara Ice Dogs?
I did.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. I try to listen. I try to listen attentively, Dan, to what you say. And the thing is, like, we never plan these things in advance, Dan and I. We just, hey, we're going to finish. You got your prospect ready. Okay, let's hit record and go. I'm also looking at the Niagara Ice Dogs, but not at Reisnecker. I'm looking at Brady Wasselin. Started, obviously, the season injured, but has come back and really has shown that the recovery was everything he needed, because he's got 5 points in 6 games out of the gates. I think he's enjoying playing with Riley Patterson, which doesn't hurt. We know he's saying he's going to Boston University next year, but depending on what the OHL looks like and how good the Ice Dogs are, who knows? But Brady Wasselin, and by what the OHL looks like, I mean, we know they're hosting the Memorial Cup next year. Maybe Wasselin thinks he and the Ice Dogs have a chance of being that Eastern Conference entry because the Western Conference is going to host it. Either way, I like what I've seen from this young man coming back from injury, really just hitting the ground running, so to speak. And Brady Wasselin is my prospect of the week.
Yeah, another kid I expect to go up that list because his pedigree coming into the OHL was extremely high, and he's starting to show why now. So I think he'll move up.
I don't get into this sort of thing an awful lot, Dan, because I prefer to deal more in what I know as opposed to what I'm hearing from sources I can't quite corroborate. But there is intrigue around Brady Wasselin right now that you were making me aware of just as we sat down this week for this podcast. And gosh, I'll tell you, it's not even November yet, and with this level of intrigue in the Ontario Hockey League, I'll take it. Like let's have some hot stove going on here with what the heck's going to go on with Brady Wasslin.
Yeah, yeah, there was definitely rumblings, and there's talk of London, and there's some denials from the Ice Dogs camp. So we'll see. But I think he's going to be a coveted player, and I think not just Wasslin, but I think you're about to see the dam burst across the league in November, as it often does. Teams figure out whether they're in or they're out, and some of the teams that are going to be in are going to want to get the big fish before they're gone. So I think you're going to see a few trades.
I like it when it happens before January the 10th. The trade deadline can be fun, and that's all well and good. But the reason I just add another element of intrigue to the Brady Wasslin story is because of our buddy Brandon Caputo. He was part of our crossover episode last season with the Armchair GM podcast network. Great guy, covers the Ice Dogs out of St. Catharines. And he talked to the GM, Frankie Vola, who said any rumors about Brady Wasslin are new to him. Remember, if you haven't heard a rumor by noon, start one of your own. Also, remember, a GM denying a rumor is almost the same as a GM saying the coach's job is safe. Come on, Dad. Come
That's
on.
fair.
Dad.
No, that's fair.
I
was thinking, if the player's about to be traded by the GM, you'd think the GM would know about it. So is he at face value? Because GMs are very seldom caught off guard by one of their players being traded. I'll put you that way.
Okay. We're going to leave it right there. The Luchenko thing, which we had from much different sources, came through just like we told you it would. Remember where you heard it first. We're just adding to the rumor mill when it comes to Brady Wasslin. He's still my prospect of the week, no matter where he plays. I don't know that anything's imminent there, but it's always fun to chat about a rumor around the league. Hey, it's always fun for us to hear from you around this league. That man over there, his name is Dan Mahar. You'll find him on X at his name, Dan Mahar. I'm on X at Farwell_OHL. Leave a comment, like, subscribe, drop us an email anytime, ohlpodcast@rogers.com. And we release new episodes every Tuesday. Your premier source for OHL information is the OHL Podcast.